Welcome, everyone. It's good to see that some of you survived the party and managed to make it here. Welcome to the roadmap session. So, for those of you who have been at a Unite before, you probably know the format. For those who don't, we have an hour today to talk about our roadmap. We have a good portion of the engineering team on stage. We also have many of them in the room here. The way it's going to work, we have about 8 sections, areas that we'll talk about. Each one is going to be roughly about 7-8 minutes. We will start by, talking 1 or 2 minutes about, the things that are on the roadmap that we're planning, and then we'll have, about 5 or 6 minutes per area for questions. There's 3 mics in the room here, 1 in each hallway. If you have a question, please line up, in the queue at the back of a mic. There will be questions for which the answer just takes way too long. In that case, I will very politely recommend you that you come see us at the Ask the Experts lab, where we have, a lot of time to answer your question. Did I forget anything, guys?
No.
I think that's about it, right? So, Eric was last to arrive this morning, so he gets to go first.
All right. Good morning. I'm Eric Yule, Director of Development in Copenhagen, and I'll tell you a bit about our networking roadmap. So our roadmap starts with our vision for networking, that anyone should be able to make a multiplayer game of any kind. So synchronous gaming, asynchronous gaming, one-on-one, or thousands of players. So this is a big vision, right? And you can't just do it all at once. So we've chunked this up into phases, and that's basically what our roadmap is. So phase 1, we just shipped in 5.1. That's what we call our foundation, and you can hear a lot more about that, and specifically the services this afternoon at 1:30 with a talk given by myself and Laros. Phase 2, we're doing what we call the simulation server. So imagine a much more powerful headless Unity client running in the cloud. That allows you to do things like, zoned instances or arena type with multiple massive concurrencies. And then we get to phase 3, and we talk about the master simulation server and how you can coordinate multiple simulation servers and, start to realize, vast open streaming worlds. So yeah, that's the general roadmap. And I guess I'll now hand off to the next guy.
No, actually, you're taking questions.
Oh, right now?
Yeah, you're taking questions right now. So do we have any questions for networking? So the way we try to do this session is sort of like, we try to make it like an informal conversation. So if you have any requests, questions, why didn't you make this? Why didn't you make that? How about you make this instead? Please, don't be shy and run up to the mic. I guess there's no one for networking. Going once.
Eenmaal.
Going twice. If you change your mind later on, at the end of yeah, we have one over there. Hit the mic. The mic's right here, 2 meters in front of you.
Okay, so as well as the physics, presumably all of the pathfinding, you're planning on working on the simulated server, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So the plan for the simulation server is that it's basically got all of the same systems running that you have in your client, right? And we want it to be basically the same engine, so that you reduce the number of corrections from the server that would occur. You're always going to get some corrections, of course, but if you're running 2 different technologies, then you're going to have much, much more. So yeah, the simulation server is intended to actually just run the systems that you care about. Not like if you don't have a physics simulation, you should be able to disable that and not have that overhead.
Sure.
But if you do, of course, yeah, we do physics, we would do path planning, we could even do animation.
Okay, and so this is purely to correct and verify any user-sent data like physics and pathfinding?
No, actually, our thought is that this would be up to you, right? Like you could just use a really thin simulation server that just does verification. Or you could go more robust, and you could have the simulation server actually drive the AI and send those updates to the clients. So in that way, like this is a trick I used to do on one of my MMOs, that is, you could actually have a much larger AI simulation
That
because
was what I was going to ask. Yeah,
Exactly,
So could you have
yeah.
a higher level of AI running over top of that?
Yes.
Without running on a kind of just hooking onto the events
Yeah, exactly. So then that's the trade-off, right? Like you're running the AI on the server, and that frees up your client to do more, perhaps graphical processing or anything else, right?
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Next question here in the middle.
Yes.
Hi. Are there any plans to provide a fully fledged backend solution? So I'm thinking in terms of authentication or store communication.
That is a great question. That might actually be better directed to Thomas, who's, I know those guys were thinking about those kinds of systems. So, yes?
Well, I think what Eric means is no.
No, I mean, I understand, like, if, like, you know, I've said the vision was like, if you wanted to make a full-fledged open streaming world MMO, yeah, that's part of that, right? You know, you need authentication, you need persistence. That's getting into, like, the phase 3.5 kind of stuff. And we don't have, like, concrete plans for that. We've had some conversations with Thomas and his teams for, like, the authentication stuff. And then we've been talking about in our teams about the persistence stuff. We don't believe in like doing technical design documents in detail like too far out in advance. And what we want to do now is focus more on like the phase 2 after the learnings from launching phase 1 and talking to all of you. Get that done and right, and then start thinking about phase 3 and these other systems. So that's basically the plan.
All right, moving to the next section. Actually, okay, one last one.
Yeah, sorry, the last one. What about HTTP actually? Like HTTP 2 is on horizon, then we, like the www class is not always working on mobile. Let's describe it like this.
That is a great question. So there's a new web request object, I think, that was made by Ian Dundor somewhere in this crowd.
We've been working on a replacement for the www object, and I think, well, it's on the roadmap where we have it scheduled. I don't remember. I think
somewhere experimental.
Yeah,
it's not on all platforms.
it's 5.2 experimental.
Yes.
5.2 experimental.
Exactly. And then it'll go out to multiple platforms beyond that.
All right. In case I actually forgot to mention, for those people who dozed off during the keynote yesterday, we announced that we made our roadmap public, so you can actually go to unity3d.com/roadmap, and it will actually already list all the stuff that we usually only talk about now. So this is a bit of a new format for us. The next section up is UI editor and input. Rune?
Thank you. I'm Rune Johansen. And I'll talk a bit about UI editor and input. For UI, we are very focused right now on fixing bugs, improving stability, and improving performance. In Unity 5.2, we're going to have much improved batching. It'll be multi-threaded, and it will generally have much better performance. Because we are so focused on stability and performance, we don't have a lot of features on the roadmap right now for UI, but we do have a few. We have also in 5.2 a new drop-down control and a 2D mask, which can give better performance if you don't have any depth in your UI anyway. For the editor, we have a few different things. In 5.2, if everything goes right, we will ship with Retina support for large resolution Mac screens.
Actually, if you already know you have a question, please already line up at the mic. Sorry.
We will also hopefully in 5.2 have a new zoomable game view, so you can much easier test your games with large resolutions that wouldn't otherwise fit inside the game view. On a bit longer term, not tied to a specific release yet, we are working on some redesigned icons for assets and components that get a stylistic lift and also designed for greater consistency. And then we have a feature we call Save Play Mode Changes, which means that if you're tweaking things in your scene while you're in play mode, because you need to tweak it in the context of the game running, then you will be able to selectively save those tweaks so you get them back into edit mode. For input, there won't be a lot of things coming short term, but we are now working on a completely new input system. I won't even begin to list all the requirements that it's meant to solve, all the use cases that it was designed to solve that the current input solutions don't. But what we've done is we've collected all the different feedback we've gotten from all of you over the years through many different channels, put it all into a big list of requirements, and then just we've got cracking designing that system. That's it.
Questions in the middle?
Hi. I'm just wondering, are you considering sort of doing anything to assist VR GUIs?
Yes. I forgot which release it's in. Maybe it's 5. Maybe it's already in 5.1. But we have a new what's called input module for the UI system that is made for VR, which is basically a crosshair centered in the screen that will hover over UI elements. Apart from that, world space GUI is also usually a good idea. But yeah, we have some things.
Yeah, the thing I'm considering is on iOS, just doing a little prototype at the moment, we've got a bit of GUI, and you have to do it to each camera. So is there a way to just do it the once and apply it across the two cameras? Is there an easy way to do that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, world space is fine, but if you've got to attach it to the camera, it's got to be very close, because what happens is if it's too close, as you turn around, it gets occluded by stuff.
I don't know the answer to that
I would
question.
recommend at the Ask the Expert section,
Okay.
we have a table about VR, and our VR engineers are there. I'm sure they'll sound a lot less silly than us trying to pretend to answer a question we don't know.
This is also a question about VR and the new input system. Do you plan to have motion tracking, like also for the headset and also hands and maybe even full body motion capturing? Is that something that you have as part of the input system because it's also input, or?
Yes. The new input system is designed to not have a specific set of inputs, but be very extensible, and accelerometers and other sensors is one of the use cases that we are explicitly considering.
Cool, awesome, thanks.
Yeah, next question on the left here.
Yeah, hi. Are there any plans, in the future to overhaul editor GUI layout and like GUI layout, specifically performance-wise?
We do. We are beginning to invest more in IMGUI, mostly for use in as editor UI. We also have a. If you come to the UI table, even though it's mostly for the UI system, we can also talk more about that there. But we are going to invest a bit in IMGUI going forward.
I had a question about the movie texture in Unity and VR.
I'm looking at you, Joe.
Because we played a lot with real-time VR, and I'm from a real estate company, and we play a lot with static pre-render stuff in VR. And the next thing we want to do is play with animation, and we're hitting limits when we want quality in the video and also performance. Yeah. So I'm asking you if there is a roadmap for that, and because I think it's the next big thing in VR and next to 3D and stuff.
One of the things we want to do is, or have put a lot of work into already, is a new video solution that works much more similar to an animation player, and basically getting rid of the movie texture completely, and a completely new API that is much faster, much better optimized.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that we're going to try and address up front, because there's going to be questions about them anyway. First of all, new mono develop. No? I was like, we're actively working on that in 5.3. Mono develop 5.9 is set to ship with Unity, so that's just an upgrade to mono develop itself. You can get a beta of that on the forums today. Try it out, help us figure all the bugs in the debugger and in all the code completion for Unity script and Unity cloud types. Beyond that, better integration. So we're going to be working on better integration of MonoDevelop through REST services, which means that we have this kind of MonoDevelop component that lives in MonoDevelop, that is the Unity integration. And within Unity, we have a REST server that can compile, but also send over changes to the project files to both sides, so that you don't get that really ugly synchronize in MonoDevelop. So that's one of the bigger things that's beyond that term. Then the other big one, of course, that we get asked about a lot is scripting team, and something that is hard to explain because it's a web of dependencies, but I'm going to try and do it in under a minute anyway, is the Mono upgrade, which means a lot of different things. First of all, what we're doing right now is working very, very hard on IL to CPP, which is important for us to be able to roll out on all platforms. All platforms mostly being consoles, Android, Windows Store apps, one of the platforms coming beyond what we now have as actual set milestones is the 3DS. Beyond that, we're going to work on a .NET upgrade, so the .NET profile upgrade, so that you can use newer .NET types for .NET 4.5 first. Now, this is something that we have right now still in the research phase. It's something very complicated that we need to figure out without breaking everyone, without breaking platforms. It's a tough problem, so it's not something that will come around the corner real soon, but we're working on it already. Then one of the things that is more short-term and something that is a little bit hard to explain, but is kind of like rolling updates. iOS IL to CPP, we're working on build times, we're working on size reduction, we're working on basically making that a way better experience, and there's a lot of people working on that today.
Do you intend to have all platforms on IL to CPP before you switch, or is it possible that you roll out the upgrade for specific platforms like, let's say, iOS and Android before?
Yeah, actually for iOS, that's already IL to CPP. That will not see a mono upgrade. All consoles will not see a mono upgrade. They will only get IL to CPP. Android will not see a mono upgrade, but will get IL to CPP. And Android is actually one of the more complicated ones for us because right now it's JIT. So if you have expectations of a JIT on the device, so probably not targeting iOS with the same project yet. And of course, things might break if you go AOT, which is what IL to CPP does. Does that make sense?
It does. On the other hand, obviously, most of the time target iOS and Android at the same time, so everything will be AOT anyways.
Yeah, we're really curious what we're going to see when the 4.5.2 beta version of Android with IL to CPP hits, and figure out all the problems there and make sure it's a good experience.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. A question on the left here?
I have basically two questions. The first, why do you still invest in MonoDevelop? It sucked for years for us, and we are pretty happy with Microsoft Visual Studio integration.
So, shall I take that one?
Yeah, take it. Go for it.
Well, I happen to be working on that. So, Visual Studio doesn't run on Mac. So that's one thing. Going forward, we will actually ship with Visual Studio on Windows, including Unity VS or Visual Studio tools for Windows. But we love that, but we also love our Mac users. So we don't see that as a free ride for us to let MonoDevelop be in the state that it is. We still want to fix the bugs there, the debugger bugs, and just make it be a much better experience. But we're very open to, as part of this work, it will also be easier to use other editors in a more nice way.
Can I jump ahead of one thing,
please,
because I know it will be coming somewhere? Visual Studio Code, the version that can run on Mac, yes, we played around with that. Yes, we looked at integrating that. We think it's quite early. We got some stuff working, but we also saw it was not the experience that we want today. That doesn't stop us from doing something in the future.
And then a more general question. With seeing your competitor engine and Microsoft C# opening up their systems, open sourcing it, modularize it, are there any plans to do more on the Unity side? I mean, you see already open sourcing parts. Will be there more parts open sourced and more community, taking community editions and stuff like this?
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure if who open sources what.
Are we going to open source more stuff?
Microsoft, Unreal, so they are opening up basically.
Sure, should I?
Yeah, well.
Yeah? Are we doing this?
I don't know.
Are we?
I don't know. I always wanted to do it, and you told me I couldn't.
So the plan is definitely that we want to absolutely have a lot of the high-level systems that we built, when we build them now, we try to build them in a high-level system and a low-level system. The low-level system is usually in C++, and the high-level system in C#. So the GUI system is a very good example of how that's done, and that's absolutely a pattern that we want to follow on more and more projects.
What about existing, like for example, modularize the graphics and the other existing core modules of Unity?
Oh, so I mean, internally we're working on modularizing those, but open sourcing like the C++ rendering code.
No, the higher level part.
There's no high level part.
Exactly.
We're all low level.
Right?
Yeah. So for example, in the renderer right now, pretty much all the rendering code is in C++. There's no sort of separation of like you have with UI, where we have some piece of code in C++ and the rest of the UI is in C#. We don't have that in rendering. So all the rendering code, all the shader systems are in C++ right now, and it's not so easy to separate them out right now.
All right, we'll take one more question on scripting before we have to move on and not have time at the end.
Hey, so I want to know if there's any plans for threaded API calls.
Yes. I mean, so we've been...
This is going to take 15 minutes.
We've been playing around with a lot of concept of how to do that properly, and that's absolutely something we want to do. I mean, we have a very good job system on the C++ side, and that's one thing we want to expose, but then on the other hand, we also want to maybe at some point get somewhere where we encourage people to write good multi-threaded code. I mean, there's a lot of ways to write multi-threaded code. A lot of people write it in a sort of like dodgy way. And just building systems that make it easy, you know, when you look at compute shaders, for example, that's a good model in my opinion to follow. But there's a lot of, I mean, first I think exposing job systems, making that easy is probably a good start.
Right, next section is graphics.
Yeah. So in terms of graphics, most of the items we're working on right now you can just see on our public roadmap, optimizing our physically based shaders to run fast on mobile and low-end platforms, upgrades to image effects that we ship with, the most important ones like tone mapping and depth of field and bloom and temporal anti-aliasing. The last one was a maybe, it's a very research phase, but the other thing that we have a team working on is fixing issues with light mapping and GI systems, and working on basically improving iteration time and improving quality, because we know that the light mapper upgrade in Unity 5 wasn't exactly very smooth sailing for many of you. So there's a team working on that. The other thing we're working on right now is just improving performance in general, particularly in the CPU area, just using more multiple cores, taking advantage of the modern APIs like DX12 and Metal. And then in general, there's like occasional programmer working on shadows or particles or terrain. The two big items that we don't have a good story right now, and I know there will be questions, what's going to happen with particles and what's going to happen with terrain. So the answer is that yes, we didn't do much work there. We are actively staffing up the teams to start doing serious work. So yeah, that's going to come, but not next week.
That's it. Ready for questions? Any graphics questions? There we are in the middle.
Is there any plan to provide really, let's say, a really cool post-affix pipeline?
Plans, yes. Dates, no.
But we have a good team actually working on it.
Yeah, we have a good team working on that, but I think the question was about whether the concept of image effects will be different, so that we don't have these separate passes, that all the effects are folded into one super optimized effect when possible. So we're actively thinking about that. There isn't much code done in that area just yet.
Yeah, question on the left?
Yeah, light mapping. I mean, most of us probably noticed a big time increase from Beast to Enlighten, and probably the final gather step specifically. I noticed on your roadmap you have a distributed light mapping plan going, or it was a mention at least.
Yes.
Does that have a? Is that, where are we with that? Is that coming?
That is coming, but definitely in the future, not in the past.
Okay, sure. Fair point. Thank you.
Other question on the left here?
Hi. There is any plan to expose the map bias of the texture in the inspector?
That should be very easy to do. Yeah, I mean, if you can remind some of us, like, I don't know, on Twitter, on whatever, to do it next week, we can do it.
Or maybe you can do it at the hands-on lab?
I could do it today, maybe, if I have time. I don't know.
Yeah, so if you meet at, let's say, 2 p.m. at Ask the Experts, maybe you can make it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay,
We got you
you.
covered, man.
See you later.
Any more questions? Any more graphics questions? Really, there was just a guy that wanted something, and he's going to get it at the end of the day, and that was the, and that was the last question. All right, if you change your mind, we'll hopefully have time at the end to take questions on any topic. So next one, services. Thomas?
Yeah, hi. I'm Thomas Rinta. I work on the services team. And for us, we're a bit of a different beast from all of these other guys because a lot of the stuff and the magic happens on the server side. But for us, the current roadmap is to make sure the services we're building, ads and analytics and the other ones that are coming out, are going to be in the editor. When you build your game, what we want to do is make sure that all of these services are available in your normal workflow. They need to be an integral part of whenever you're making your game. And so what we're going to have is probably a slightly different timeline to everything else, because what we want to have is the tools for you to put ads and analytics into your game and to have the feature working. What then happens is, as we talked about the keynote, is we solve hard problems. For us, a lot of that stuff happens on the server side. So we're continuing improving the services, so whenever you go and check out these services, it might be that they're actually improving a bit more rapidly than the stuff on the editor side. But what's happening concretely on the releases is for 5.2, we're making a release where we're pushing these services into the editor. There's going to be ads and there's going to be analytics, and they're going to be very much designed so that they are easy to use, so you focus on actually using these services to benefit your game. With ads, making sure you're generating good experiences for the user, not disrupting them, enabling monetization of the users. With analytics, getting actually the player data you need to improve your game, and not have to really worry about how all of it happens, because our roadmap is making sure we do all of that. So in 5.2, all of that is coming. 5.3 will be introducing new features. I think heat maps was coming in 5.3, but it's mostly about just getting these features to you guys at this point, because services, honestly, they're a very newish thing still to us. So I think that's about it.
Yeah. Do we have any questions on services, ads? Yeah, over there.
Hi. Basically, on the analytics side, do you have any plans to have any sort of feedback from the server to the actual client? For instance, the analytics system we use allows what they call engagement requests, where the client will send some data or and will basically get a response for targeting purposes that can just modify the game at runtime.
Yeah, so you're essentially talking about kind of like a segmented CRM system where you place on player data or behavior can target messages and behavior. So this is something, of course, do we have John from analytics here? Nope. He would have been able to give a more definite answer, but this is something
They answered it yesterday, actually, in the talk.
Okay.
I mean, it's not something they're actively working on, but it's something that we see a lot of good use cases for. And so definitely want to do that at some point.
Yeah, question on the left here.
Hi. Now that you've got Unity Ads and Unity Analytics, is there any plans to combine the two so we can get tracking data from users who click one of our ads, install our game, and start playing?
So of course, what we want to do is provide you with the best possible analytics, and all of that comes from the total lifetime of the user, where they come from, what they do, how they generate revenue for you, or how they behave based on different campaigns. So of course, it's a very large task to build something like that, so it's really useful for you. Because you can do it quickly, but then it's going to suck. We want to build good solutions and solving hard problems, so yes, we're working the ads and analytics are working very tightly together to really combine these two.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, question on the right?
Hello. We are currently using the cloud build services, and from time to time it happens that the build just cancels half an hour in, and we don't get any clear idea why this is happening through the detailed logs. Are there any plans to make it more transparent what is actually happening in the cloud build services?
So for that, I would suggest there's a booth for Cloud Build just outside. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer for that, but I think Nathan from Cloud Build, the Cloud Build team, is here today. And so I would suggest you talk to him, find the specific case, and see what the problem is. And from there, they can probably figure out what's happening and how to improve that.
Thanks.
Question on the left here?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure. I see a lot of the analytics is web-based, but I suppose it relates more to the editor. But for example, the asset store tab in Unity is a very clunky thing to use. And so I was curious if you had any plans to improve on that, but I more just want to hear that any ads or analytics integration is not going to be that clunky.
So actually in 5.2 what we're doing is that we're building, some of the interfaces are directly in the editor, but what we've focused on is making those experiences really smooth. So it's going to be better. So I feel their pain on that, and we've spent time on making sure the user experience when you're using the feature is good, because that's really important to us.
And the asset store window, it's implemented using like a browser as the backend.
Yeah, I would.
Which is
I would
why
much
the
rather
experience
it
is a
wasn't
bit
there at all.
different. But that's not true for the services stuff, or is it?
Well, not
it is?
quite. So we're bridging, since a lot of the stuff is web-based, we're using that, but we're doing it a bit. We've done a new way of bringing that content where we've made sure that we're not repeating the same issue that was with the asset store and the UI performance. So one of the keys was to make sure that the UIs we bring really actually work as they were a native part of the editor.
Yeah. Last question on services on the right.
No, I was just anticipating your next round. So it's not about services.
No, now you have to ask a question about services. I'm sorry. That's not how it works. Oh, we have one here. You got lucky.
Yeah, I will be the last one. Regarding asset server, is it still your considered as services?
We're definitely thinking about how to make collaboration better in Unity.
Okay.
Well, what the hell does that mean?
The question is, I am in a good topic to talk about asset server.
So asset server specifically is a technology that we are letting die. Okay. But in general, collaboration is something we want to do really, really well in Unity.
So maybe the question is the same, but the difficulty is to compare to Unity, to scene, to point Unity, if there's any, differences. When you make a commit and you can have some guys working on.
Right, so
that's the only file we can really compare if we have, different version and people works.
Right, so the question is, I guess, merging of scenes. So in 5.0 we added support for merging of scenes when you enable YAML files. And also generally merging of scenes works much better due to some file layout changes that we did. So that is in 5.0 already, and also longer term we want to make a better UI so that if you indeed still have conflicts after our merging process helps you do the right thing automatically, then you can still choose between two versions. But definitely scene merging is something we have been investing in and will continue to invest in.
Okay, perfect. Next topic. What time is it? Yeah, maybe, but I already said it was the last question. Next one is core.
Yeah. So one of the features that we have been working on a lot and are still working on is multi-scene editing. So that's basically the ability to open multiple scenes in the It's the ability to open multiple scenes in the editor, save them separate from each other, and it just makes it easy to create both streamed scenes, but also better work in a team without stepping on each other's foot. As part of that is also baking technology. So in 5.2, we've already added support for multi-level baking, and that's a technique where you can basically bake all your levels together and then separate out the data so that it works well in a streaming scenario. The same team that is working on multi-scene editing will work on nested prefabs. Yeah, I guess everyone knows what that is.
Or do they?
Or do they, yeah. Then we have done a lot of work already on asset bundles. In 5.0, we shipped support for making the build pipeline much better, and now a lot of work is going into the runtime part. Basically, reading the compressed files really, really efficiently, recompression of asset bundles as you download them, and a lot of things like that to just make it much, much better at runtime, much more performant, much less memory hungry. There's work on asynchronous texture loading, so that when you're asynchronously loading scenes or textures, you get a very stable frame rate. The NavMesh system, there's a lot of improvements focused very much on the baking side of things. There's actually, yeah, it's also in the roadmap, but basically we have the concept of NavMesh surfaces that you can move around. The concept of prefabs with NavMeshes working well together. The concept of baking NavMeshes at runtime, updating parts of the area and multiple NavMeshes in one scene. So a lot of things about making the baking part and the creation of NavMeshes at runtime much, much better. Then there's been some work on a concept called culling groups, which lets you make large-scale simulations really well in Unity. So if you want to make a game like City Skylines, that becomes much easier to do. On the animation side, the big focus is the director project. In 5.2, we're shipping as an experimental mode the first parts of it, the playable API with which you can basically create the runtime graph that Mechanim usually generates through state machines. You can generate it yourself through scripting, so it's very powerful. You can do anything that Mechanim do from code. And then there's a lot of work in parallel going on about sequencing tools and integration with video, with audio, with animation, and just making a very nice, consistent product for making cutscenes and any kind of animation in Unity. And then there's also animation and retargeting, animation retargeting and IK for generic characters. So if you want to retarget a lizard or something, you can do that. Questions?
Yes, Sean?
You already mentioned that that's one team working on the nested prefabs and scene, like multi-editing scene. There was one interesting posting on the forum, I think in the nested prefabs thread, about actually kind of like merging the concept of scenes and prefabs, because a prefab is kind of like a very small scene, or a scene is like a very big prefab. Is that something that you've considered, or is that actually not really working that well if you think
it's something that we have definitely talked about, but how do I say this? We want to first actually ship it And then we want to make it more complicated.
Yeah, question on the right?
Yeah. My question is about the API of blend shapes, which there isn't. And maybe...
And the answer is yes.
No, but...
There's a pull request that is going in soon.
Oh, okay.
Is it in?
Maybe they went into trunk already. I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
On the left?
I have two questions. The first is, will you be able at some time to rotate the nav mesh to use it in 2D, for example?
The answer is yes.
Very good.
That's part of the that's part of the nav mesh surface API, where you can rotate it that way. You can also use it in 2D. And I mean, there's a lot of flexibility that we're really working on the baking side to make that awesome.
Okay, that's great. And the second question, are you considering to build in visual scripting into Unity?
On the roadmap websites, it's actually under, I think it's under research.
Yes, so I mean, as part of the Director project, there's a lot of research going on how to do that well. So we're interested in it, but we want to get it right.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's...
I think we tried 2 times already.
Yeah.
Right? So far, neither of them shipped because they both sucked. So we'll have to see what happens with attempt number 3.
Okay, cool. And please make it open source.
Duly noted. The question in the middle?
Hi. We have problems when we make prefabs and we make changes, and for instance Unity crashes, and then we lose a lot of work done, especially the artists when they make a lot of changes and something goes wrong and the whole Unity crashes, and then when you load it up, nothing's there. So are you planning on any autosave feature, anything like that keeps the changes from what you've worked on, or either prefab or anything like that? Because we have many problems with this in many different situations, and it's super hard to replicate. So even if you were to post it on the forum or something, there's no way to replicate this. It just happens sometimes, right?
Sure. We did a Hack Week project on this actually, and that looked very promising. I don't know if it's on the roadmap or what the exact plan is.
I don't think so right now.
But yeah, it definitely makes sense, and once we figure out exactly how to do all these pieces to do that robustly, then it's something we want to do. But currently not actively working on it, but definitely interested.
We finally have a graphics question.
Do you have any plans to allow baking of light maps or lighting probes or reflection probes at runtime for stuff like randomly generated words?
Reflection probes, you can already update that in real time.
Okay.
And that works pretty well.
Yeah. For stuff like light maps?
Well, the real-time light maps obviously update in real time.
Yeah, so I think with the new light mapping technologies that they are looking into this path tracing thing, I think it's sort of under consideration about whether that would be possible to do at runtime for procedural levels or anything, but there's no definite answer whether that's feasible or not right now. We don't know yet.
Okay.
But it's definitely on the consideration.
And the next question is there any ETA for the nested prefabs?
Is there any what?
Any ETA?
When is it going to be done?
No.
Okay, thank you.
On the native side, we have done a lot of work in our job system, a lot of basic work, and now it's a lot about reaping the benefits from that. So when you look at performance now, you see a lot of things going wide, but then in parallel to scripting, nothing happening. So that's the next big thing that we want to address it, basically running a lot of the engine code completely in parallel to the script code running, and running it in a way so that it's safe and doesn't change the execution order of your script code or any of the results that you get. Then there's a lot of work moving all the geometry generation things like particle systems or all these kind of small rendering components that we have, moving them into geometry jobs, which basically makes all the computation run on a thread and off the main thread. You already mentioned render loop optimization, I guess, moving that to jobs. Yeah, that was the job system. On the memory side, there's a lot of work on making sure we get better control in Unity about memory, and also hopefully exposing that a little bit to the user so that you can control things.
Anything goes. Sir on the right.
Hi. I got another core question related to the first core question that was asked a minute ago about nested prefabs that could become nested scenes at some point.
Yeah.
Indeed, at the moment, except when you declare don't destroy at load on a game object so that it survives from one level to the other, there's no real way, no real clean way to have something shared between scenes. And in the case of a large game or a large non-game application, it's often necessary to have some of the stuff always there and surviving from one scene to the other. And before Unity, I used another software where the scenes were organized in a hierarchic tree, and you could have a scene parent inherited by the subscenes and so on, and you could have several levels of inheritance, and so you could declare like a root scene with stuff, visuals or scripts that were always there in your whole game, and then subparts like intro, main game, outro, and then subparts and so on, and you could organize your assets, your content, and also your scripting in that tree. It was very efficient and very useful and very scalable. So I was wondering if it was something planned for the future.
Right. So we have talked about it, but the thing about it is that integrating all of this into Unity and making all these concepts with properties and how we override things in prefabs, making all of this work well and making it run fast enough is, I mean, the biggest problem is we don't completely know how to do all the different pieces yet. And so our focus right now is we want to get the multi-scene editing, shipping out there, and then we want to focus on nested prefabs and actually just focus on solving the most important problems. And when we're done with that, then we can take some time back and, you know, like really think about how we do that in the futures. And maybe combining nested prefabs and scenes makes sense, but it's just, I feel that it's not the right time to do that.
I think that's something for the far future, maybe for Unity 6 or 7 or something like that. But I think it's worth thinking about it.
Absolutely, it's a very interesting idea to do that for sure.
Thank you.
Oh, question on the left?
Yeah, I got two questions. One thing is about endless loops that sometimes happen somewhere in the engine in your code or in the Unity, but it's really hard to detect them because the app just freezes if it's an app or the editor, and there's nothing to do, like no Stack Overflow or nothing, just need to find them yourself. So that's one question. Is there anything going to be done about that? And the other question is about asset bundles. Will there ever be a way to put code or logics inside the things you download in your app?
So you can already add a mono behavior component to a game object in the asset bundle. But I guess what you really want is like you want to have a new additional script code in the asset bundle. It's tricky because there's many relevant platforms like iOS where they really don't want you to download additional code once it has gone through their verification process and then run it. You can kind of do it on non-iOS platforms by downloading like a separate DLL and then using assembly.load at runtime, which is a little bit annoying because you have to hook a bit more stuff up manually. So it's not impossible. On some platforms it's impossible, and on other platforms it's possible but a little bit inconvenient.
For the kind of, I made a mistake in my game and now I'm in an infinite loop and now everything crashes. We're looking at the solutions for that. All of that is really complicated in terms of how the editor works and how stuff is fast in the editor today and how it nicely interacts with the player. We played around with it at a scripting week as an idea, what we could do with that. Nothing near term. It's an artifact. You get a lot of speed in the editor because of the way we do things. You get a lot of direct interaction because of it. So,
well, the Stack Overflow we could do, right? It's just the infinite loop that's hard.
The Stack Overflow is also not always doable. If you do this in a static constructor, then there's no more stack left for us to get the stack trace, this kind of stuff.
Right. So, sorry, kind of hard.
But we're thinking about it.
Question on the right?
Hi. While in the runtime, if you move things around, change component values, and then press pause again, kind of everything resets. Sometimes that's nice because you can kind of mess around, but sometimes you'd like them to stay in the way you adjusted, especially moving multiple objects at the same time, like 5 different things. You think that's fine, you press on pause, everything changes. Because for one, you can copy values, but if for multiples, it can get a bit annoying sometimes. It would be possible to kind of have some kind of way to set up, so when I press pause, keep the old values changed in runtime. Sometimes reset them. So that's you.
Right. We're working on a feature so that you can selectively save changes you tweak during play mode. That includes when the game is paused, and get them into edit mode. So it won't be depending on whether you are paused or not, but anything you tweak in play mode, you'll be able to save. Well, for start, it will be only changes to property values, not added or removed components or game objects, but we'll see if we can expand it after that.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming to our roadmap session.